So without any further ado, we're going to learn why is there a robot in my store. Joseph Scarupa, the editorial director of RAS News, will lead our panel discussion on this. Joseph, take it away.
Thanks a lot, Alan. And I have to say I'm really excited about being on a panel about robots. It's kind of a boyhood dream come true. You know, I used to work at Popular Mechanics for 10 years, and we covered futuristic stuff all the time, and everybody who asked me about working there, I say, well, where's my flying car? You know, where's my robot? And here we are talking about robots, and not just in the back office, but in stores. Now, my esteemed colleagues here have terrific stories to tell. They're each going to introduce themselves when they begin speaking, and I want to jump right into our session. And you know, as exciting as robots are, I'm going to address this one to Stephen. You know, there is a certain science fiction aspect about it. I mean, are we really there yet? Is it something that can really happen in the front of the store? I know they work great in warehouses, but there's a lot that needs to happen to make them work in front of the store. Are we really there yet, Stephen?
Oh, thank you, Joe. If I could just start out by saying my name is Stephen Platt. I'm the research director at the Retail Analytics Council at Northwestern University. We are the only university-sponsored institute focused on retail AI and robotics on the planet. We have a lab in Evanston, Illinois. We're opening our next lab up in San Francisco in May. And in April, we have our annual Retail AI and Robotics Conference. Any retailers invited to attend free of charge. In terms of what's happening in the front of the store and bots, I think we're there, and there's a lot of good examples of that. You're seeing shelf audit bots being tested in many stores, including Walmart. Brain Corporation announced their floor scrubbers, about 360 units. Cali Burger is now talking about Flippy, the robotic hamburger guy or something. So. It's happening for a lot of reasons, increased productivity, issues with labor. I think that it's going to continue to be a trend. I just wanted to mention about 2 years ago, there was a study, Joe, I saw put out, and it had the top 200 industries adopting robots. Number one, as you could imagine, was automotive. Number 200 was window washers, and retailers weren't even on the list. Now you're starting to see, and there's a lot of evidence of that, and Tim will talk about some pretty exciting news he has this afternoon, where retail robots are really going to find their place in the front of the store.
Now, I'm going to bring Nick into the conversation. And Nick, you know, if I'm to believe this, the news reports in the media, there's actually robots in your stores. And I believe the robot's name is Marty. And can you tell me what Marty actually does in the store?
Yeah, I can. And I can actually show you who Marty is as well, so we can do that. But I'm Nick Bertram. I'm president of Giant, which is a 95-year-old supermarket company based in Pennsylvania. And we're part of Ahold Delhaize, which is one of the largest international grocery retailing group based in Zaandam, with a lot of iconic brands here in the East Coast of the U.S. And you know, we're pretty excited to stop thinking about it and start doing. And that's really what's happening inside of the family of companies of Ahold Delhaize. So today we actually announced that we've gone from piloting it to actually executing it and doing a full-scale deployment with our partner here to the right, and he'll talk a little bit more about that as well. But it's really been in process for a number of years. It's not something that we just started. It's something that took a lot of work to try and find out exactly what could be solved inside of the stores, exactly what could be augmenting the service that our customers receive, and that's really what we brought into life. And so I see it on the confidence monitor. There we go. Here's what Marty looks like in the store. We've been in pilot again for just a little bit of time so far. You can see that we personified it. So instead of just being a 6'3" robot, we actually made it look a bit more like a human. And so you see the googly eyes, and yes, they do kind of swing around, although Marty doesn't move that fast, so there's not too much swinging on there. And you can see some of the customer reactions as they look at it as he or she, whatever the gender is, tries to go throughout the store to assist us in some of the work that's going on. And in some of our stores, you have different floor surfaces. So if you think about just the transport over those, whether it's a proper tile or whether it has something a little bit different, there's different elements of that this will highlight. what's really cool and what we did not expect until we started piloting this was that our customers actually loved it. We thought that it might freak some of them out, and of course it did freak some of them out. But especially children found out that having robotics live inside of a supermarket is something that is actually exciting. And so we would often see, through our social media channels, people doing selfies with the robot. One friend that I have sent a picture with her triplet sons in front of the robot in one of the stores where we're piloting it in. And we made it part of our community engagement efforts as well. So Marty actually leaves the office every now and then, or leaves the store, and goes out into different STEM summits and other things throughout the organization. So we're pretty excited about that, and it's good to know that people aren't terribly intimidated. Here's an example of getting social from our Giant Food Stores Facebook post, where we just wanted to, again, target it to that particular store that we were piloting it in, so we did not, freak customers out or anything else as we added this technology inside of it to really bring it to life. And then there's actually a brief video that you can see as well. It's on YouTube, and it's actually in a couple of different areas. But I think, so this is what Marty looks like whenever going throughout the store, and you can see the camera that's moving around. The purpose of our robot is really to make sure that our stores are a safe place for both associates and vendors and customers to be in. And so we have a pretty strong legacy of not having slips, trips, and falls inside of our stores. And this robot helps us to take that to the next level by scanning for different areas where there may be a hazard, and then alerting an associate in our maintenance team to come out immediately and take care of that hazard. And then Marty resumes the work that was started throughout that. And you can just see some of the selfies that I mentioned earlier. We put a little name tag on it as well, so people knew exactly what to call it. But by and large, this has been something that we're very proud of, and it's one of the reasons why through our pilots we made the decision to go strong on this. And between our company and the Stop and Shop supermarket company, which is also part of All Delays, and our service company, Retail Business Services, we launched what I believe is the largest actual deployment of robotics in supermarkets in the US. If there's a bigger example, I haven't seen that yet. And we're really proud of that, because we're hungry for innovation. We're hungry to find different ways to bring this technology to life, to help out our associates so that they can do what's most important to them, which is engaging with our customers.
And Tim, Marty wasn't just born yesterday. It's been an evolutionary process for robotics. And I do want to talk more about the functionality of Marty and how we got here and what that involved, and give us some insight.
Good. And we started off with this science fiction idea, and our guys, our engineers, were challenged with the notion of how do you leverage robotics in a retail environment. And we were driven by the thought of brick and mortar, especially, where there seems to be a gap between what you want to happen at headquarters and what's actually going on. And how do we help bridge that gap? And the idea was to give visibility into the store locations. And that was the technology offer. What do you do with that? So fortunately, as Nick mentioned, we engaged with RBS as a partner and kind of made that question, what would you do with this thing? And floor inspections, out of stock, planogram, price integrity, they were by far the top on the list. And we continue to get that verified. But this inspecting floors thing just jumped out as the first thing. And from a technologist, I'm glad to get it out in a store. And oh my God, I had no idea how many people come through a weekend of your stores, but thousands of shoppers and big buggies that are very heavy, and how do you behave in that environment? And it scared the daylights out of our engineers, but after a year of testing, and we've kind of dialed it into where it's very practical, and you'll see some very good reactions. So it's taking a autonomous robot, putting a sensing tower on it with various cameras, but imagine that platform can be other things. RFID, sensors, temp sense, the whole notion of how do I use that to get visibility to the executive team to say, how am I improving my operations?
I was thinking of that. It's a robot that performs, functions very well right now, but those functions are not, are almost, I won't say infinite, but certainly extend along a broad spectrum. Nick, Tim was talking about those functions it performs, but it also intersects with people. I mean, you showed people taking selfies and that. What are some of the things you had to think about when you considered that there was a robot in your store and there were customers in your store at the same time?
Yeah, I think what we assumed was that customers would have a reaction to it. What we didn't know is what that reaction was. And by, again, personifying it, by making it look just a little bit more fun, it was a good, I would say, way to reflect who our brand is, trying to be engaging and not hide the fact that there's a robot, but actually celebrate the fact that there's a robot. Our company is one that's pretty famous for innovation and creating new things anyway, so our customer base is accustomed to us trying something crazy and new and different inside of the store, and that's why we're happy about it. But we also wanted to make sure that our associates understood exactly what it was and what it was not, and so there was as much of an education campaign for those that work inside of our stores as there were for those who shop inside of our stores.
As I think about, I think you said possibly one of the biggest rollouts of robots, certainly in retail. Tim, I'm thinking that that must have required some preparation, some requirements. Give us an idea of what you need to do to make that happen.
Yeah, this is the good news, bad news story. You get a big rollout. Now we got to do a big rollout. So
yes, you do.
And we knew that we couldn't just drop technology on the front door and look for a retailer to put all the pieces together. So, here we are, Badger Technologies, some 70-some people. We have a parent company that fully owned is Jabil, does the manufacturing, the supply chain. We can scale almost as much as we need to. $22 billion and 180,000 employees. That was one piece. The other is we partnered with a great service provider in Toshiba, so they're able to scale that whole region, deploy, install, do the mapping, do the service for that. So we had to be bigger than we were to deliver a solution that's going to scale, be reliable. This thing can't fail. Again, it's the standard. If you're going to lead, you better lead right and not come back. So we've got to have that striving for excellence and making sure this thing is flawless. And it takes a lot of work, as you said, but it's a great partnership. Which store, what time, when do the tech show up, when is this thing approved, when do we cut it loose and start reporting back to their back-end systems. That's not easy stuff, but it's necessary stuff.
And Nick, you definitely mentioned the positive feedback on social media and people, some people not as positive about it just with any innovation, any disruption like that. But do any concerns come up that have arisen that, as people go forward, well, it's my store and geez, I better think of every angle out here. Is there anything that's come up that, a concern that you might want to mention?
Yeah, I think the elephant in the room, if you like, it would be what does that replace? Does that replace actual people? And the answer is it replaces tasks that were assigned to service associates to free them up to really focus on, again, customer engagement. So as much as it replaces those tasks, it doesn't replace those people. We had to be very honest and overt with our public, but also with our associate base and exactly what that was and what that was not. And without a good feedback loop, because we pilot things for a reason to find out what might go wrong, what might be improved upon, and we have a really strong innovation team that is constantly scouring those comments and asking and actually doing site visits to figure it out and then bring it back. And then we have a very responsive IT group and an NFR group that was able to make whatever changes, with our partners to bring it to life. So I think as you have the courage to go out and do something like this, you just have to be smart and listen and expect that things are not going to go the exact way that you want them to, but also allow yourself to be surprised that they are actually easier than you think, and there's a higher acceptance in the public for robotics than perhaps some might assume there is.
Yeah, Stephen, I was wondering if your group has done any digging into that issue. Certainly retailers have always had a high turnover rate among employees. They're constantly trying to fill those spots, especially in a tight labor market. What do you think of as the labor issues or the labor concerns that might be associated with robotic rollouts?
Sure, great question. And by the way, let me, if I may, confirm that this is in fact the largest retail front of store rollout in the world. So congratulations to you both on this exciting day. I'm glad you raised that question. I get that question all the time about how many people are going to get laid off from their jobs, and I think Nick put it really well. Labor is a scarce resource, and it's an expensive resource, and the point is, where is it best deployed? Is it best deployed stocking a shelf, or is it best deployed helping customers? And so state of the art today, and you see this like in Alibaba warehouses, Amazon warehouses, it's bots assisting humans together executing tasks. Robots are not that, don't yet have the the human sort of functionality to touch and move and stuff. So working together is really the future of how that goes. And then you start to look at productivity enhancements, increased profitability. You know, we have a lot of retailers, their staff, they're losing sales because their staff is focused on customers, as they should be. So they know that they're not stocking enough merchandise and they're losing sales. So the complement of the customer service by employees, bots doing minimal functions, you know, highest and best use. I think that it's a great combination and a winning combination.
You know, Tim and Nick said that Marty, I think you said it was 6'3" tall, and it's certainly dedicated to doing certain functions. And Stephen, I guess you can imagine, and your association has looked at other robots, different sizes, different shapes, different functionalities. Certainly not ready for prime time, probably right now, but in the future. What sort of functionalities do you think retailers might be looking forward to in their use of, you know, front of store robots?
Sure. So we're seeing now some concepts for actually bots that stock a shelf. And as I said, the complexity of that, you know, one minute you're loading a jar, the next minute you're loading a cardboard box. It's a very complex function. We see that. What Tim was alluding to, and I agree, is a robot is basically a platform, right? And once you have your nav system, loading other functionality onto that, like RFID and other tasks and functions, you know, drive up the utility, lower the effective cost by increasing the functionality, the drivers of value. The next really big push for us is really how do we capture all that data beyond what the primary function is, i.e. auditing shelves. How do we take that data and do some really cool stuff in AI with it? That's a little further down the road, but we see a lot of different use cases for bots in the front of the store.
So when you think of use cases and you think of trials, pilot projects, and big rollouts, you know, another elephant in the room has been, you know, the cost. You know, I mean, you're getting benefit out of it. You're spending a lot of money to make it happen. You're pioneering things that may indeed go wrong. I'm going to toss this over to you, Tim. A tough question, but I do want to actually ask all three of you from different perspectives. So Tim, what about this question that a lot of people might have in their minds? Well, I think it's a great idea, but I wonder if it's too costly.
Right.
Any ROI?
So, you know, obviously the hurdle and how much is this technology going to happen? I mean, most of us know there's technology in here that is part of self-driving cars, self-parking cars called LiDAR. No secret to any of us, that technology is $10,000 2 or 3 years ago. It went to $5,000, it went to $2,500. It's, you know, very high on a very steep curve. We need that technology buried in here, but we know it can't be the hurdle to adoption. So I commend my team. We designed it with cost engineering in mind, and I set almost an arbitrary target that said, listen, if I take an ideal employee, what is that cost? And I can't be higher than that. So kind of the vision is for that level. It's fun when I talk to the kids, I said, it's, you know, about the cost of your dad's pickup truck. You know, it's about the cost of, but that's just a good way to set a bar, and then now it's incumbent on us to what is the return for that investment. So this next slide, we talk about, you know, what is the return on investment? And I'm anxious for this community to start to develop what is it worth in the industry to know you're out of stock and how can I manage that? Your planogram compliance, if my price tag is either removed or in the wrong place. So that's kind of to the general community. Nick and his team, we've developed what is the return for this floor inspection. And you know, it's got to be of value to the retailers before it's any value to any of the rest of us. So you know, it's kind of the call to let's begin to quantify how can that help us be
That's
more
a great slide for
operational.
helping
So-
us. And Nick, yeah, I definitely want to ask you about that. Obviously, I don't want you to give away. I know it's relatively early in this, although I'm sure you've done some projections. But I think that better spill detection, that accident detection thing, in and of itself was a big driver for ROI. But tell us what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, I think I agree with everything that he said. You know, you have to be strategic on how to kind of frame or stack the ROI. There's some things that you really want immediately but don't necessarily have the immediate payback. And then there are some things that are more practical to get a payback on. We chose that which was more practical for our business to get a payback on, so that we can then stack in those other things that are going to be even more interesting to consumers and to our supplier partners over time. And so that's really, I think, what we learned in partnership going through this. If you go in with saying, here's exactly what I want everything to do, you may not get what you want. But if you can go in a bit more practically and say, let's start with this, and then let's build a module on top of it, and then to build a module on top of that, you can get there with good partnership. And you also have the time to learn. And I think you mentioned it, but technology is just, I mean, the cost continues to decrease as adoption goes up and as people become less kind of risk averse to bringing in artificial intelligence and all the other things that go into this. So we need to be, in the retail industry, taking advantage of this exponential growth in technology, not avoiding it, in my opinion.
Yeah, if I could also add, I mean, I think also there's a lot of room in the early stage of the development for creative thinking about cost, right? Normally you say, how much does that cost? Well, the bot costs X and the service costs this. So, you know, starting to think about things like robots as a service, right? How about we'll give you the bot and we'll charge you on how much data you use, or how much savings we help you drive in efficiencies through your store. So I think we're still kind of early in the evolution and application, but I also think we're going to help to work on some very creative ways of getting that cost as low as possible and the ROI as high as possible.
You know, and I think another benefit is to a robot in a store, and certainly would love to hear your opinion, Nick, is that it's actually a way for a retailer to get headquarters eyes, you know, in a store for whatever that's worth. I mean, it's certainly worth something to have spill detection and accident detection. It's certainly something that if you have computer vision and you can detect out of stocks and things like that. But a lot of things go on in a store every minute of every day, and businesses like to track that and see who's doing, you know, at the average, who's doing below average, who's doing above average. There's lots of ways that those eyes in the store can be put to use. Do you have any you know, ideas on how that might work out for you?
I do, and it's this technology. It's also cameralytics. Most stores have CCTV systems that you can dial into and use a lot of different things, and we've experimented with that. I think, in my mind, what I'm most excited about is probably phase 2, where we really get to planogram compliance and also in-stock. Customer in-stock continues to be, you know, centuries later, the thing that customers continue to be frustrated on, regardless of how good you get. If you have that one item that's not there at that one time that she wants it, you have failed in that trip. And so I think anything that we can do to put technology against that is a smart thing to do, and will have a real-time benefit. And that's one of the things that I'm probably most interested in over time.
So, just have a few minutes left, and I want to give you the what's next question. So let's start with you, Tim. I mean, obviously, you probably have some ideas about roadmaps down the future. Not sure you want to tip your hand on that, but what's next for your company, Robotics, and what might be coming down the line?
You know, I think about what is working is taking redundant tasks, mundane tasks maybe, automating that, giving consistency, giving visibility. So I think of what other audits or inspections are happening. I then turn my attention on, is there waste that may be associated, I'll just say it out there, you know, with your produce area, with meat and seafoods. How can I help minimize that or alert the staff that it's time to move those or other things? So, you know, to Stephen's point, the IoT world has just said, listen, there are so many options for temperature, for gases, for infrared, for, okay, technologists in the group, come on guys, let's come up with what am I going to do to give practical answers, and then these guys will put a dollar value on it. It'll say it'll help my operation or it won't. So I love the cool factor of some of this, but until that cool factor translates to something Nick's going to pay me some money for, it's not going to make much sense. So.
And Stephen, you know, instead of the cool factor, let's talk about the form factor. There's probably, I mean, you've probably studied a lot of different types of what robots might become. And I want to certainly ask you, what the future is here, but I'm sure there are different form factors that play into the functions that can happen for robots. And what is your organization studying and seeing?
Sure. The major focus for us is candidly around RFID and being able to have continuous monitoring of inventory accuracy 24 hours a day throughout a store. We're also focused on using that to do demand planning, demand forecasting to tighten up the supply chain and do things like Tim mentioned, which is, reduce waste. So, for example, every week you send 5 cases of tomatoes to your store no matter what, and half of them end up in the garbage. With demand planning, RFID bots giving me accurate, daily inventory accuracy counts, all of a sudden I cut down waste, I cut down selling old produce to my customers who are very disappointed, I integrate traceability up through the entire supply chain. And so, but I need bots in the front of the store to tell me what's on the shelf and how old it is. So that's kind of where we're focused. RFID, demand planning, traceability to the source.
Okay. I should have asked this earlier on, but Steve, do you have a definition of a robot? So in other words, can a robot be fixed? Does it have to move? Does it have to have eyes? What is a definition?
Yeah, good question. There's a phrase that is used called robotic process automation. Maybe you've heard it. Which has nothing really to do with a robot. It's just AI processing technology. Technically, a service robot, which is what we're talking, does have some physical components to it. And there's 100 different definitions, and there's no real no one sort of, yeah. But typically I think about some physical component. It could be a hand. It doesn't really much matter. Sure. Robotic process automation, we're trying to get people to think about intelligent automation. So we audit expense reports. We order matching POs against shipments and apply intelligence into that. It's called robotics. I don't agree with it, but.
Okay. And I'm going to give the final word to you, Nick. I've asked them, what's next. You've actually given us some hints on that, but what does it do for you as a retailer? Why are robotics beneficial to a retailer? What does that provide for you in your stores?
I think every retailer is still focusing on servicing the customer, and so anything you can do to free up your team to do high-touch service is a really good thing, and you'll be rewarded for it. And it's not something that you should shy away from. And there's a lot of things, excuse me, I screamed a lot last night as Philadelphia was playing, so forgive the voice. But there's just a lot of other things that happen in the office. RPA is a great example, and the distribution centers automation. There's a ton of different things that can help what the end product looks like to customers, but at the end of the day, it's really about freeing up our staff to be the experts that customers still want when they come into a supermarket.
Well, I think that's going to do us for our panel here. I want to thank our outstanding panels and experts for talking about robots, which fulfills a childhood fantasy of mine. So thank you very much.